Hello students, today we'll learn a new chapter, Balai, written by Rabindranath Tagore.
It has been said that the story of man appears in the epilogue of the history of all forms of life in the world, and we know that among the people around us we find tacit hints of various forms of animal life. In fact, what we call human is the trait in us which levels and combines all the animals in ourselves, which puts the cow and the tiger in us in the same pen, the snake and the mongoose in the same cage. Like a raga, it takes all the notes within its being and weaves them into a musical form so that they can no longer fight among themselves. However, it has to be admitted that a certain note might play a prominent role in a given raga, the D in one tune, the C sharp in another, the E in a third one. So the writer here, he says that the story of man appears in the epilogue. Epilogue is nothing but a section or a speech at the end of a work. He is telling that the story of man appears in every form of life. In every aspect, the story of a man is revealed, and in various forms we find hints of animal life. And what we call ourselves as human, even we are a part of the animal kingdom. So here he is trying to say that we all live in the world, in the same world, but you cannot put some creatures together because they are like enemies. He has already given an example there. The snake and the mongoose, the cow and the tiger, we cannot put them in the same cage. But sometimes you have to admit that there is a certain note in the entire raga, that's the music. One part is very prominent or it's very important. Like for example, in one tune it may be the D or it may be the C sharp. He's just referring it to the music. In my nephew, Balai, the notes of the plant kingdom somehow appeared to be the dominant ones. Ever since his childhood days, he had preferred to be still and watchful rather than to move around. When layers of dark clouds gathered solemnly in the eastern sky, his entire soul seemed to fill with moist winds, carrying the aroma of a forest during the rains. And when the rain came down in torrents, his whole body listened to its sound. When the sunbeams slanted onto the terrace in the afternoon, he would walk around bare-chested as if to absorb something from the sky's expanse. When the mango trees blossomed at the end of winter, an intense joy awoke in his bloodstream, raising inarticulate memories of something. In the spring, his soul filled out, spread its branches, and took on a deeper color like a forest of blossoming sal trees. He liked to talk to himself then, weaving together all the stories he had ever heard, like the stories of the old bird couple who made their nest in the hollow of the age-old banyan tree. So now the writer is talking about his nephew. Now who is a nephew? The son of one's brother or sister. In Hindi you can say bhatija or bhanja. So this person's name is Balai, and he tells that in Balai, the plant kingdom, the notes of the plant kingdom are the dominant ones, are the important one. That is, he is more towards the plant kingdom. Ever since his childhood days, he always liked to be still without moving around, and he would just like to watch. And when layers of clouds would form before the rain, his entire soul would be filled with moist winds. He would be so happy. And when it would rain, he would just listen to the sound of it. His entire concentration would be on the sound made by the rain. And sometimes when it's afternoon, he would go to the terrace and he would just absorb the sun rays, and he would be bare chested, he would just absorb it. It would make him so happy. Even when the mango trees blossomed, he would be very happy. It would bring an immense happiness inside him. His entire soul would be filled out. and he liked talking to himself. He was a boy who gazed all the time with his wide eyes. He did not speak very much, so he had to think a lot. Once I took him to the mountains. Deep green grass ran from our cottage front down to the foot of the hills. His heart would fill with joy at the sight. He did not think of the layer of grass as an immobile object, rather as a rolling mass in an endless game. He himself used to roll quite often down the grassy slope. At those times, his whole body would be covered by grass. As he rolled, the grass would tickle his neck and he would laugh uncontrollably. So he was a boy who was very curious. He used to look around here and there with his wide eyes every time. He did not speak often and he used to think a lot. So one day the writer had taken him to the mountains and they had their cottage over there, and from there till the bottom the entire region was covered with deep dark green grass, and Balai would be so happy looking at it. He would not think of the grass as an immovable object. For him it was a living thing, a rolling mass, and he sometimes used to roll across that grassy slope and the entire body would be covered with grass. Now, as he rolled down, the grass would tickle his neck and he would start laughing uncontrollably. After a rainy night, when the first morning sun peeped through the mountain tops and its golden rays reached the deodar trees, he used to creep away without telling anyone to the silent shades of the deodar woods and stand there fascinated and alone. It was an airy experience. It seemed that he could see the people inside those huge trees. They could not speak, but they seemed to know everything. They were like ancient grandfathers from the times of once there was a king. So after a rainy night, when the first morning sun used to peep through the mountain tops and its golden rays used to fall or reach the ground in between the deodar trees. Now what are deodar trees? These are called as Himalayan cedar. It is a type native to Himalayas and it grows at the height of 5,000 to 10,000 feet. So Balai, without informing anyone, he would just creep out of the house and he would run towards the woods and he would just stand under the shades of those deodar trees and he would just look at that scene. It would be so beautiful. For him, it was an amazing experience, and he would tell that people would be living inside those huge trees because they cannot speak but they know everything because they are from a very long time living there. So they have seen plenty of people come and go from there. So they have lots of stories to tell. It hurt him deeply when someone plucked flowers from a tree, and he also understood that his feeling was totally meaningless to anyone else. Hence, he wanted to conceal his distress. When boys of his age threw stones at the amla trees to bring the fruits down, he could not say anything. He would turn away and leave the place. While walking through the garden, his friends would beat the trees with sticks just to tease him, or suddenly snap off a bakul branch. He did not dare cry, lest someone thought him crazy. His worst troubles arose when the grass cutter came to cut the grass, because he had watched countless wonders in the grass, small creepers, nameless violet and yellow flowers, tiny in size, here and there a nightshade whose blue flowers have a little golden dot at the center, medicinal plants near the fence, a kalmeg here and an anantamul there, neem seeds left by birds sprouting into plants, spreading beautiful leaves. All those were cleared with a heartless weeding tool. None of them were prize trees of the garden. There was no one to listen to their protest. So this boy, Balai, he would feel hurt when someone would pluck flowers from a plant or a tree. And he knew that this feeling that he is feeling is totally meaningless to anyone. No one really bothered about what he felt. And he would conceal or he would keep his feelings hidden from everyone so that they wouldn't make fun of him. The boys of his age, his friends, they would just throw stones at the amla tree so that they could bring the fruit down. He would not say anything to them. He would just leave the place. He would go away from them. And even while walking through the gardens, his friends would purposely beat the trees with sticks just to tease him, or snap off a branch from a tree. He did not dare cry at that time, thinking that people may think that he is crazy. So he kept quiet. He would struggle by himself. But the worst troubles came when a grass cutter would come to home to cut the grass, because he had seen lots of wonders in those grass. For us it was just grass, but for him it was different types of plants. There were some small creepers, there were some flowers, violet and yellow colors. They were small in size, and there was blue flowers having a little dot at the center. They had medicinal plants, or a kalmag here and an anantumal there. Both are types of herbs, and some neem seeds left by the birds. He would see all these, but for us it was just grass, and all these plants would be cleared by a heartless weeding tool. So none of them could protest. No plants could protest. And even if he protested, no one was ready to listen to him. Sometimes he sat on his aunt's lap, hugged her, and pleaded, "Please, ask the grass cutter not to cut down those plants of mine." His aunt said, "Balai, don't be silly. Those are weeds. How can you let them grow?" Balai had long begun to realize that some of the pains he experienced were his alone. They were not felt by anyone around him. So here sometimes Balai would go to his aunt, and he would sit on her lap and hug her and plead, "Please tell the grass cutter not to cut my plants." And Balai's aunt, she would respond by saying, "How can you leave those plants to grow? Those are weeds. They are undesirable, not a proper plant as such. They are useless." So Balai had realized that some things he has to experience by himself. No one is going to understand about his feelings, so he has to control it by himself. This boy really belonged to the age millions of years ago, when the earth's would-be forest cried at birth among the marshlands newly sprung from the ocean's depth. There were no animals at that time, no birds, no din and bustle of life, only rocks and mud and water all around. The plant, vanguard of all living things on the road of time, had raised its jointed hands to the sun and said, "I want to stay here, I want to live. I am an eternal traveler. Rain or sun, night or day, I shall keep traveling through death after death, towards the pilgrim's goal of endless life." That ancient chant of the plants reverberates to this day. In the woods and forests, hills and meadows, and the life of the Mother Earth declares through the leaves and branches, "I want to stay, I want to stay." The plant, speechless foster mother of life on earth, has drawn nourishment from the heavens since time immemorial to feed her progeny, has gathered the sap, the vigor, the savour of life for the earth's immortal store, and raised to the sky the message of beleaguered life, "I want to stay." Balai could feel that eternal message of life in a special way in his bloodstream. We used to laugh at him a good deal. One morning, while I was intently reading the newspaper, Balai led me excitedly to the garden. He showed me a plant and asked me, "Uncle, what kind of plant is this?" Writer here, he says that this boy did not belong to this present world. He belonged to the world millions of years ago, when there was no animals, no birds, no bustle of this life. It was just rock, mud, and water all around. So he would be so happy at that time. Those were the times when the plant would raise hands to the sun and say that, "I want to stay here, I want to live." There was no one to destroy them, kill them. Plants would have freely grown everywhere. They were free to move, they were free to live. And Balai understood this message. It was that, "I want to stay." Even those plants have the right to live in this world. When Balai understood this, the people around him did not. They would laugh at him. And one morning, when Balai's uncle, the writer, he was reading the newspaper. Balai came excitedly to him and he took him to the garden and he showed a plant and he asked, "Uncle, what kind of plant is this?" I looked and found a silk cotton plant sprouting in the middle of the gravelled garden path. Alas, Balai made a sad mistake by showing it to me. He had noticed it when only a tiny sapling had come out of the ground like a child's first babblings. Since then, he had watered it every morning and evening and eagerly kept track of its growth. Silk cotton trees grow fast, but it had grown about 2 cubits height. Balai looked at its foliage and judged it to be an exceptional tree, just as any mother considers her child exceptional when it shows the first signs of intelligence. Balai had thought he would surprise me by showing me the plant. So the uncle looked at it and it was a silk cotton plant and it was growing right in the middle of the gravelled garden path, the path that was done towards the garden. And now Balai had made a sad mistake by showing it to the writer. He had not noticed it, but now when Balai showed him, he saw that it was just a tiny sapling. It was like a small child. And from that day onwards, Balai used to water it every morning and evening and he used to look after that tree every now and then. Now these silk cotton trees, they grow very fast and it had almost grown into 2 cubits height, and Balai looked at its growth and he was so happy and proud, just like how a mother would be of her own child. The Balai had thought that by showing this plant to his uncle would be very happy, but it was the other way around. I do hope you have understood this lesson till now. The next part will be continued in the next video. If you have any doubts, you can comment below and keep watching for more videos and do subscribe to my channel. Thank you and stay safe.